90 years old, and he could still lift a hay bale off the ground without stopping to catch his breath. I watched my grandfather do it not once, dozens of times, well into his final decade. And nobody around here thought it was remarkable, because where I live, that's just what old age looks like. But I've talked to enough people from the English world to know that what I grew up thinking was normal is, to most of you, almost unbelievable. Men and women in their 60s already struggling to rise from a chair without using the armrests, legs that feel heavy by noon, arms that can't lift what they used to, and doctors who shrug and say, that's just what happens. I want to tell you something, my friend, and I want you to hear it the way I mean it, not to make you feel bad, but to open a door. It's not your age that's stealing your muscle. Something else is, something that happens slowly over years, and something that can begin to shift the same way slowly and for real. Here where I live, the men don't go to gyms. We don't have them. The women don't follow exercise programs or buy protein powders. And yet, at 80, many of our elders are still physically capable in ways that would surprise you deeply. My grandmother, God rest her, was churning, carrying, bending, and walking until she was past 87. Not because she was special, because of something we do, or rather, something we have never stopped doing, that the modern world quietly walked away from without realizing what it was leaving behind. That something is not eggs. It's not any single food most people would guess, and I'll tell you exactly what it is. But first, I need you to understand why your body is losing muscle in the first place, because if you skip that part, the answer won't make sense and it won't stick. Let me start with something my father told me when I was young enough to think I already knew everything. He said, "A muscle that has never asked a question forgets how to answer." I didn't understand it then. I do now. Your body is not sentimental. It doesn't hold on to what it isn't using. Every pound of muscle you carry costs your body real energy to maintain. Even at rest, muscle burns fuel. So your body's always making a quiet calculation. Is this worth keeping? Is anyone using this? And if the answer day after day is no, if your legs carry you from a bed to a couch to a car and back again, if your arms rarely lift anything heavier than a bag of groceries, your body begins a slow, silent process of letting that muscle go. The English world has a medical name for this: sarcopenia, the gradual loss of muscle mass that begins around your mid-30s and accelerates after 60. Doctors will tell you it's natural. And in one sense, that's true, the mechanism is natural. But the speed at which most modern people experience it, the severity of it, the way it can take someone from capable to frail inside of a few years, that part is not inevitable. That part is a choice. A slow, invisible, accumulated choice about how we use our bodies each day. Here where I was raised, nobody ever sat down and thought about that choice. We didn't have to, because our lives made it for us. By 6 in the morning, a man here has already loaded wood, walked to the barn, and done the first feeding. Not as exercise, as life. By the time an English person has had their first cup of coffee, our people have asked their muscles a dozen quiet questions, and the muscles have answered. Day after day, decade after decade, the body never gets the message to let go. Now, I'm not telling you this to make the Amish life sound like the only life. I'm telling you this because buried inside that daily pattern is something specific, something you can take out of our world and bring into yours, and it will change what your body does. Because it is not about working hard, it's about what kind of work. And here is where I have to tell you something that surprised even me when I began to really think about it. The single most powerful thing our elders do for their muscle, and they have never once called it by this name, is what the outside world now calls resistance-based incidental movement. Not structured exercise, not a program, not reps and sets. Something far simpler and far older. But before I explain what that means in practice, I want to tell you about something else our elders do, something most people overlook entirely, that makes that movement matter twice as much as it would otherwise. Because you can move all day and still lose muscle. If the other piece is missing, I saw this firsthand with a man in our community, not one of my family, but a neighbor, a good man, hardworking his whole life. He kept moving well into his late 70s, but around 78, he began to thin. Not his effort, his body, and what we found eventually was that he had quietly, gradually stopped doing the one other thing that makes the movement count. I'll tell you what that was. But stay with me because the order matters. My father's father, my grandfather, the man I opened with, the one lifting hay bales at 90, he had two things going for him that most people in the modern world have lost. And they worked together like two wheels on the same cart. Take one away, and the cart doesn't roll. The first wheel is the movement I'll describe. The second wheel is something about how he ate, not what he ate, not some superfood or supplement, but when and how and what he never allowed near his table. And understanding the second wheel is what makes the first one finally make sense. So let's walk through both. The movement our people do, the kind that keeps muscle on an 80-year-old who has never seen the inside of a gym, has three qualities that separate it from what most people think of when they hear the word exercise. First, it is never completely comfortable. That's the key word, never completely. Not painful, not punishing, but always slightly demanding. Carrying something just heavy enough that your arms know they're working. Walking up an incline instead of around it. Lifting from the floor instead of from a table. The body needs that edge of demand. Without it, the question never gets asked, and the muscle never answers. Second, it happens throughout the day, not in a single block. This is the part that most shocks people from the English world when I describe our mornings. The effort is distributed. An hour of slow walking, followed by 6 hours of sitting, does far less than that same hour of walking, broken into a dozen small efforts spread across the whole day. The signal to the muscle has to be repeated, like knocking on a door more than once. Third, and this is the piece that I believe matters most for people over 60, it involves what I can only describe as full body loading. Bending to pick up something real, pushing against something that pushes back, rising from a low surface without assistance, carrying weight on both sides of the body. These are movements that ask many muscles at once, and they leave no part of the body untouched. Now, I want you to think about something honestly. How many times yesterday did your body experience any of those three things? Not as a program, not as exercise, just as part of being alive? For many people reading this, watching this, the honest answer is almost none. And the body has learned to adjust. If you've been following a channel like mine for any length of time, I think you already feel what I'm saying is true. You don't need me to convince you. What you need is the other wheel. Because here's where the story of my neighbor comes back. This man moved, he worked, he met those three qualities in many ways, even into his late 70s. But he had quietly fallen into a habit that was undoing everything his movement was trying to build. He had stopped eating enough of the right kind of food at the right kind of time. Not because he was sick, not because he couldn't afford it, because when you live alone, when the house gets quieter, when the appetite naturally softens with age, it becomes easy to eat less without noticing a small breakfast, a light lunch, a thin supper, and your body, already past 60, already fighting to hold on to muscle, begins to run a deficit it cannot recover from. Here's what I mean by that. Every time your body repairs or builds muscle, and it does this even in small amounts, when you move the way I described it, needs raw material. That material comes from protein, not from a powder, not from a supplement, from food, real food, the kind we've always eaten here. Eggs. Yes, eggs matter. And I know the title of this video may have made you curious about that. We eat eggs here, plenty of them. But eggs alone are not the answer I'm giving you today, and I'll tell you why in a moment. The full answer is this: the consistent, steady, throughout the day supply of protein-rich whole food, timed close enough to your movement that the body can use it. My grandfather ate in a pattern I've never seen described in a book, but that any doctor studying muscle metabolism in recent years would immediately recognize as sound. He ate something with real substance in the morning before the work began. He ate again at midday a full, proper meal, not a light one. And in the evening he ate again, modestly but not sparingly. He never skipped, he never let a long stretch of the day go by with nothing going in. And what was in those meals? What did we eat? Not what the modern world eats. No packages with 20 ingredients none of us can pronounce. No oils cooked at temperatures that strip them of everything useful. No bread so processed it turns to sugar before it even reaches your stomach. What we ate and what our elders still eat, eggs from our own hens, yes, but also dried beans, slow cooked with onion and salt pork, raw milk, and the cheeses and creams made from it. Dark rye bread with dense crumb, baked slow, nothing added that didn't need to be there. Meat from animals that lived outside and moved. Vegetables from the garden, simply prepared. Soup, always soup made from bones, left to simmer for hours until the liquid ran golden and thick. None of it designed. All of it, looking back now, almost perfectly constructed to give an aging body what it needs to keep its muscle and keep its strength. Here's the part that surprised even me when I began to think about it clearly. It's not one food. It's not eggs. It's the pattern. And the pattern has two parts. The protein spread consistently through the day and the movement that gives that protein somewhere to go. One without the other is a cart with one wheel. And I'll tell you what the modern world does instead. It eats most of its protein at one meal, usually dinner, after a long day of barely moving, and then it sits, and the body flooded with more protein than it can use at that moment, and fresh off a day with no muscular demand, doesn't know what to do with it. It can't build what hasn't been asked of it. And so the muscle slowly thins, and the person grows frailer, and the doctor says that's just age. It is not just age. Now, before I tell you what this looks like in practice, how to actually begin making these two wheels turn together in your own daily life, I want to say something, and I mean it simply. I'm not a doctor. I'm an old man from a plain community who has watched 3 generations of his people age in a way that the English world calls impossible. What I'm sharing is the wisdom I grew up in. Every one of you should speak with your own doctor before changing how you eat or how you move, especially if you have conditions you're managing. That matters. I believe in that. What I'm offering is not medicine. It's what I know from living it. And if you found this channel worth your time and you haven't yet chosen to stay close, this would be a good moment for that, because what's coming next is something I haven't shared on this channel yet, and it builds directly on everything I've just described. Stay close. Now, what does this look like for someone living in the modern world without a farm, without a barn, without hay bales? The movement piece does not require a gym. It requires a decision made many times a day to choose the version of a task that asks more of your body rather than less. Rise from your chair without using your hands, not once, every time. That is a loaded movement. That is a question asked to your legs and your core and your back. It takes 6 seconds. Do it every time you stand, and you've asked that question 30 or 40 times before noon. Carry your groceries in both hands instead of using a cart all the way to the car. Walk to the end of your property and back with something in your arms. Find one surface in your home, a countertop, a table, and push against it with both hands as if you were trying to move it. You won't move it, but your muscles will answer. Go up your stairs instead of avoiding them. If you have no stairs, find a curb and step up and down from it 10 times, slowly with control. These are the small distributed demands that our daily life here builds in automatically, and that you have to put back deliberately. Do these things throughout the day, not in a single session, not in a block. Spread them like seeds across your morning and your afternoon. For the food piece, think in terms of the whole day, not the biggest meal. Something with real protein in the morning, eggs, yes, or beans, or even a small piece of leftover meat from the night before. Something again at midday that is not light, that has substance, that includes something your body can actually use to build, and something in the evening that is modest but present. If you can, make bone broth at home or find a simple, honest version at a store. My people have sipped warm broth the way the English world drinks coffee, and there is more in that habit than most people realize. Reduce the gaps. Don't let 6 or 7 hours pass with nothing coming in. The body of someone over 60 is not patient. It will not wait. Give it the raw material more often, in smaller amounts, and pair it with the movement, and you will feel the difference not tomorrow, but within weeks. My grandfather lived to 96. He never set foot in a gym. He never counted a gram of protein or followed a program. He just never let a day pass where his body wasn't asked a few honest questions, and never let it go hungry long enough to start eating itself. The English world calls that discipline. We just call it Tuesday. You are not too old. You have not missed the window. The body is more patient than the mind believes, and more responsive than the doctors sometimes admit. What it needs is not a miracle. It needs a consistent signal. Ask the question. Provide the material. Repeat. That's it. That's the whole thing. Dressed up in different clothes by 1,000 different programs and books, but at the root of it, that's all it is. And our people figured it out not by studying it, but by living it for generations without ever giving it a name. Tell me in the comments, what's the one thing your body struggles with most after 60? I read every one, I answer when I can, and knowing what weighs on you helps me decide what to share next. Stay close, my friend, because next time I'll share the way we handle the cold months here, what our elders do when the days get short and movement gets harder and most people pull inward, something the modern world forgot a long time ago, and that I think will matter more to you than you expect.